Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Leadership in the Age of Physical AI. And we have another very special guest here today, Nick Shelton. Not only is he a great friend of mine, he's done some amazing work in the AI and tech space. He's authored multiple books of note, especially The Good Life. And I wouldn't do him justice if I introduced him. I'm going to give it to him. But he's worked at Google. He's worked on the bleeding edge of a lot of amazing tech, worked on a bunch of AI startups. Nick, tell us all a little bit more about yourself.
Well, first, it's glad to be here, especially given our history. But yeah, so I started my career, some 16 years ago, starting at Google. Started off in their sales go-to-market division. Got to see how Google in those startup days, and it was interesting to see it. And over my 8-year history there, saw it grow to be global multinational. Even my own expertise shifted from sales, marketing, go-to-market to recruiting, which I've loved. I've been associated in the recruiting the last decade, helping grow teams, help build lasting systems, and all that goes along with that from the HR side. But as most people do, I've gotten the itch to join the world of startups. So joined 2018, a company that was only 15 people at the time is called Applied Intuition. They do autonomy of pretty much everything now. Back then, there was focusing on self-driving cars. Now, a $15 billion company. And so I like to say it was some of those early people I hired that helped them get there, but more so just a wonderful team. It was great to be a part of that ride. And then I worked with a handful of other startups, some in the medical space, one that actually was advanced manufacturing, worked in batteries, and then started my own consultancy the last 2 years, really focused on AI companies very early on. And we are certainly going into a different area. It's so fun to see what teams are doing with so much less, and how even from 6 years ago, the landscape has changed of how companies are starting, how they're going to market, and assembling the right team to actually make themselves a profitable business.
We're actually quite glad that you're here because, I mean, the number one question that we get is about jobs. And from someone who's sort of both handled the tech side, been part of the AI revolution, really, and also understanding human resources training and how that whole industry has evolved over the last, say, 10, 15 years. I'm keen to know, what are your thoughts on the future of recruiting, future of hiring? Are people, okay, let me just ask you this bluntly. Are we all going to lose our jobs?
No, there is some optimism. And I even had myself. I've even wondered, like, oh, yeah, is there going to be such thing as recruiting teams, HR managers? And so I think I'm certainly on the optimistic side. But I think there's something we all need to know. And we know that, one, we need to be open for change. So the one thing, this goes back to my Google days, and this is not the world of AI, but when I worked at Google, we found like the biggest thing that prevented us from people adopting Google products, and it was mostly just about change. And so the number one thing that Google trained us as account executives was like, all right, learn how to manage people and learn change management skills. And we were representing, Gmail, Google Drive, eventually Google Cloud. And we would speak with people who knew that it was a better solution out there, but it was just a matter of managing what people do. And so I think we have to know, as people, we have to be open to change. We need to start adopting these AI tools. And, once we understand that, we can make ourselves much more fungible in the labor market. And one thing I like to kind of steer this conversation to kind of give people a high level perspective. And it comes from a Sam Altman quote that he mentioned 2 years ago. And I think as we're seeing materialize now, but the labor force has been a pyramid since the Industrial Revolution. So you have a large bottom layer of workforce that, your hourly workers, your recent college grads, and whether it's a factory, whether it's a tech company, it's kind of followed that same. And people will kind of grow up the ladder and eventually get to the CEO. I think that is about to change in the world of AI. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the world of physical AI. But he said the format of the new company is going to be diamond shaped. There's going to be very few people that AI is going to take that whole bottom layer of data analyst of, entry level work. And there's going to be a large middle layer, and people will have agents and AI assistants, that digital clones up under them that will be doing that work. And then they will be, kind of the same executive function that will be managing that. So we're already seeing that. I get up here in the world of, Silicon Valley startups that I think are early adopters, and they are certainly already, forming that structure right now. So my first question to you is, peer of having a lens on the world of physical AI, is Is that what the world of physical AI is shaping up to be as well?
Yeah, surprisingly, yes. So one of the ramifications really of how how the physical AI is changing because of AI as its core is I'll talk about the industries that we will be operating in, particularly mining, energy, and those heavy industries. We had a stack that was called the ISA 95, and that's been, that's been the gold standard for the last 50, 60 years. So basically half of a century. And everything, every product, every people is built on that pyramid scheme. And it's quite surprising that you mentioned how this pyramid is going to be flattened. And within the technical side, our fundamental prevailing theory is that that's going to be squished into a circular shape. Not, but potentially it might end up being a diamond. And there is always that synchronization between how the tech and the capacity really and people and how they join forces together. Industry 5.0 is something is a vague attempt at trying to kind of get that into play, right? So how that works for us, I mean there are multiple names for it. One of the names is called a UNS, or a unified naming system, and that unified naming system basically looks at a whole new factory as a whole network. It's just like a big data center, and tech is kind of evolving and emerging to kind of be points, or sort of, so we're calling it points in the circle, but we may, because it's such an emerging field and there's so much going on at the moment, we may end up in a place where we have a stack layer where we've got humans in a sort of say a diamond shaped formation, and then the tech stack below it in another diamond shaped formation. Vision is just such a big part of it. But again, I think sort of just coming back to the people side of things, it's been our theory, our thesis rather, that the flow is coming up because of AI, and the economies are going to expand. And especially once we get to the physical AI, once physical AI becomes a bigger thing, right? And so with physical AI becoming a bigger thing, what's going to happen is once economies expand, we don't really have enough people. So, and I'm sort of hoping that this session is more on that. We could sort of talk to training these people. What do we need? How do we need to get people skilled up for this new AI world? And that's why this whole podcast is called Leadership in the World of AI, because we think we see the future where we've got AI agents doing a lot of the sort of nitty-gritty work that was given to people before, and humans basically being the leaders for AI agents.
Mhm. Yeah. And to go to your question, and you alluded to this now, like there's really two people I say that you need to worry about your job. One is the data analyst, the data entry people, and it's like AI is already there and probably already replaced your job. The other, and this is actually scary for a lot, is the 100% people manager. And, I think in a traditional world, you kind of like, oh, you get out in the workforce, you work hard early in your career in your 20s and 30s, and you work your way up into management and you just manage people. And, I think in the future workforce, whatever industry you be, you're not going to just be 100% managing people. And so I would say don't rely on that skill. And so luckily, you can still right now start learning how to manage AI agents, learn how to use these assistants. So I think, that is something you need to build. The other, the implication is, I think where a lot of businesses are rely more just on personal relationships. Have a lot of my network who have continued on with the sales process, now VP directors of sales, and they're seeing it now and saying like, yeah, as a salesperson, our strength is going to be in the relationships we have. And the same way you said, like training is going to be huge. There's going to be all these new customized tools, software, AI to use, but we have to have people to, train for that. So it's more of like, who is your relationships with? If you're a trainer, who do you have that you can train that will be in that network? And so I think anyone, you need to start be building of like, who is your personal network? And that is going to be a part of your job. And I think this goes back to who we are as humans. We're supposed to have those relationships, whether business, social, or even like ourselves have gone back and friendship level
Yeah.
almost 20 years now.
No, that's so true, right? I mean, because we see this dystopian world where my agents are friends with your agents. I don't think that's going to be I don't think that's the future we want to build, because I think at a human level, those relationships are going to matter even more. But let's sort of just circling back to the whole people recruitment and what people need to upskill on, especially with now that we're not that far from having physical AI as part of our world, right? Like, I mean, 3 years ago, AI was still an out there thing. It was just such a small niche of people working on AI, and it was just for the scientists. And now, my 5-year-old girl, she knows ChatGPT, and she's like, "Oh, let's ask ChatGPT." So they're growing up in a world where it's like the Google from our generation, where we don't know any other any other program really. So, and physical AI, we think in the next couple of years will become such an integral part of everyone's life, right? And all the more, one of the questions that, I'm on the board of a school, and the questions that the school is asking is, what are we training our kids on? What do they need to learn? What skills do they need to learn? And coming from recruiting and understanding people in this tech, I'm keen. I am keen, and I'm sure the audience is also keen to kind of understand where are we training these people on skills, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, my first recommendation is obviously playing around with that and like make it a part of your day and even force myself. And I use the mornings. I'm a morning person, I think like similar to yourself. And so I say like, let me force myself to integrate this. If I'm helping a company write a job description, that's great. Or creating rubrics for interviews, what makes a good profile, saying like, well, I could do this myself, but let's filter it through. Let's get that. And I am finding, I'm getting a lot of insights, things I wouldn't have gotten even if I budgeted myself 2 hours to go in depth from there. So I think that's the first level, is just make sure it's integrated. And then, even in interviews for your next job, you can say like, oh, this is how I've used it in the past. Like, yes, it's a useful tool. The second step I recommend is learn to build. I'm not a software engineer. I did some web development back in the day. But I think this goes back to what we've had a lot of conversations about, the good life. People find satisfaction no matter if you're a creative person, whether you're an engineer, but people love to build something. And so they are tools. And so, try to develop your first app. The other day, I listened to a lot of podcasts, audiobooks, and I'm saying like, what if I could develop my own audiobook app, and let's just go through the process. So use one of the coding agents, did that learning process, had to even ask it of like, okay, where do I put this? How do I get it from the cloud to here? And it guided me through it. And so just force yourself, give yourself a couple hours on the weekend and think of something that you could build, whether it's a personal fitness tracker, whether it's a better design to a spreadsheet that you do. But I think you kind of see the joys, and you see, where I see all these software engineers that, I work with, they are working harder than ever. And is because it's almost, they can't stop. We've had to say that they're like, but they love that they're like, oh, I can get this started. I can work on this. And I've always wanted to work on this project. And before I thought I would have to take a sabbatical to do it. And I can now just do it at night when I get home. Yeah, I think there
Wake
is
up in
going
the
to be
morning and it's ready.
yeah. And I don't know what's happening in people's health and sleep habits, but the early adopters have seen that, and it kind of shows you like, oh, okay, we can. And obviously, we don't live in a pure software world, but our life touches technology in so many ways, and I think there's just something there. So once you get that, I think people understand the potential of what it can be, and then it even kind of flips a switch of like, oh, okay, I can see how my job will be that much more productive if I can build like this and have these customized things and not waste my time on menial tasks that I don't think any of us enjoy anyways.
But that's the amazing thing, right? Like, sort of mediocre code is no longer allowed. Like, you cannot come into a room and basically hand over sloppy code, because it's like, oh, I've spent a lot of time on this. This is the best I could do. That's no longer accepted because of that, right? So all of a sudden, your quality of code, quality of your coding structure has actually come up. So that puts more pressure on the actual software engineers to deliver a higher quality product. And people who are not sort of delivering a high quality product are not going to be wanted. So that quality control is something that has to be ingrained in people's life, and teaching AI agents to kind of deliver to a level that's acceptable. I've got a couple of things that's so within Tryfecta with it. So our physical AI wings called robotics, and robotics actually has some really cool features. One of those is it's got an internal software builder. So for organizations, we no longer have to write code. So every time policy changes, generally that goes back to the CTO to kind of change systems and change software. All you do is upload the policy, and it fundamentally shifts how the software is presented to the users, or how people use software. So that interaction's changing. And the the other thing that was really cool that we rolled out yesterday was this handwriting recognition software for, incidentally, one of our vendors who asked for help with it, and they saw what we're doing and said, "Hey, we need some help with some handwriting recognition." And it was hilarious because these really poor handwritten notes, I could not read them, but the AI read them. And look at that, I can see the two in there, So,
Right.
and it's amazing. It's amazing what it can do. So, you know, so so it kind of fundamentally shifts how we think about, about tech, implementing tech. We needed to, like, so the sort of going back, the way to solve some of these problems was, oh, we put our fingerprint scanner in, or we put, some sort of a digital scanner in, and we've got to put all those bits and pieces. We've got to train people. Now, like, well, just give us what you've got. We'll let AI figure it out. And there's always that, and this is where there is a gap bridge between hardware and software. And I remember when I was doing my dissertation, we one of the models that I'd looked at was the old Apache helicopters. And interestingly, my professor, he was actually on the team that certified the Apache helicopters. So yeah, and so he had actually taken it. So, and this is many, many, many years ago, and when software was just not as mature, and where a lot of the heavy lifting was actually on the hardware side. And so, one of the interesting things he told me, and so this is, outside, I'm sure this is declassified, was, so because the software wasn't good enough, they had to build just the the glass dome that covers the front of the Apache. And the key thing with Apache was battle management, right? So it could fly into a battle space and immediately pick up 10 or 20 threats and classify them and said, hey, I need you to focus in this order. Instead of a human basically coming in and going, oh, right, okay, trying to assess the battlefield, trying to understand what's going on there. So the software assisted the humans make better decisions, and that started a long time ago. But here's where, from a tech side, I know I'm pulling you slowly here, but I think this is quite fascinating. Because of chromatic aberration, because of how light comes into a camera sensor, they had to build it out of sapphire, and that was a $3 million back in the day, in the 1980s. $3 million glass canopy that big, So, and they actually trained it in Australia, in the middle of Australia, where they had a wide range of lights. And so the hardware needed to filter out and give a very clean image to the software to figure it out. And now I've got a $10 camera here that can do pretty much what an Apache does. So the shift is moving from hardware to software. And as humans, we've kind of trained to work on this hardware side. We physicists understand chromatic aberration, blah, blah, blah. So, and they don't, and sort of now in the future, the physics of things are not really a hindrance to us. It's just about, we could take a Perspex glass, build a better software sensor at the back end, and do as much as I could with the US Department of Defense back in the 80s.
Yep. And where this really clicked for me is, I was working with a team of engineers, and they kind of gave the perspective of saying, like, all right, think about how we came with domesticated dogs. We started with wolves, and then, over hundreds of years of, breeding and all that, we have all the breeds of dogs. And it's like, oh, that's a marvel. And it even shows like what humans, us ingenuity, we can do. But they said, well, think of that as these agents and digital twins. We can do that, but we can do it overnight. We can have, through reinforcement learning, tens of thousands of cycles. We figure out, keep getting better and better. And then the next day, an agent has gone from there to a perfect at a certain task. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I understand why this is so powerful now. And, to your example of like, yeah, what takes millions is now a $10 instrument. And then what's something that we could think of there's like, oh, overnight, it can be just as good as you, if not better in there. So, and I know you've referenced digital twins and all that, but I think, people don't really understand what that's the potential of, if we can actually get that, and especially in the world of physical AI, of one that can think on the ground floor in a factory, in a mind, and like how changing that will be.
Yeah, so we go by the motto, digital twin is dead, long live digital twins. So, I mean, I think, so especially with the way that well, we are looking at things, we've kind of have to throw, and especially when it's a new startup, we have to throw the rule book out. We've basically, so that's how the rules were written. That's how we did things. Even from my first startup 5 years ago, just realizing really quickly that we can't follow principles from there. Yeah, I've done it before. I'm going to copy it. Just doesn't exist anymore. So first principles is kind of where I'm very grateful to one of my mentors who drilled me on first principles, and that first principle thinking has changed my life really, right? And so I still think that the sort of fundamental level skill training is what we need to sort of ingrain into students, into people coming out of, so you've got sort of two waves of people. You've got people already at the fag end of their university life, school life, getting ready to get into workforce slash start businesses, start work, whatever they do, I don't think there's going to be big companies anymore. I think there's going to be much more startups and people kind of doing their own thing. On the other side, you've got kids who have basically born into the AI era, and they've got a long way ahead of them. And how does training and school curriculums, university education sort of train them in the next 20 years? And you know that in the next 20 years, AI is building AI. So things are going to be vastly different.
Mm-hmm. It's yeah, I don't even know where to recommend. And yeah, going back to your point on the nature of companies, like I'm seeing it going smaller and smaller. I was lucky enough to go see Silicon Valley through the 2010s and saw firsthand through Google and saw the other kind of tech giants rise at that time, Meta, Amazon. Then kind of was sitting on the sidelines and saw the kind of second wave of startups, the Ubers, the Airbnbs of the world. But even their approach was, all right, yeah, hire a lot of engineers. Let's get a lot of people. Let's build great marketing teams. Let's go swing for the fences. And some of them, were major successes. But, even the generation of startups I'm seeing now, it is very much more focused. They're, raising money, probably much more even comparison for, but their teams are so small. And they've even come up to me and saying like, how do we find the right people? And like, instead of hiring 12 software engineers, we want to hire one or two that get our culture, that understands this, it's going to be there through the thick and thin. And the same, it's like, all right, we're not just going to hire a team of marketing people. It's like we might hire one salesperson, and they're also expected to do marketing as well. We're going to keep the loop up, and they're finding there's so much more. There's not that organizational hierarchy prevents things. And I've been impressed with a lot of teams, 4 to 10 people that are getting a lot done. And if you were to, no one would guess behind the scenes, it's only a small team. But I think that's there. And I've been a part of those. I know you have as well. And there's certain joy of that. It's almost like you are a family. And so, yeah, I think the world's going to be a better place if run by all of these smaller, close-knit companies that can kind of look out for its people, but also be very focused and not have to deal with the old school framework of running a large corporation.
Yeah. The industries we come from and the industries we are targeting really, the behemoths, they're huge, huge organizations. And so how that's going to shift is something that, again, I don't think we need to come with a preconceived notion on how things will be. And my training really has been to work and understand and then suggest or move, right? So, and now with AI, so that iterative process is faster than ever before. So we're almost out of time here. And I know we have you on for the next show, but so closing remarks. So especially for those people, I think talk to those people who are especially concerned about their jobs, right? Right, the current workforce, right? So the millennials and the and the people the people who are falling into their career fair enough. What can they do right now, I suppose, in terms of getting ready for what's coming?
Yep. And so for the young people that not sure what they want to do, don't have a job, I just get good at these AI skills. There's a lot of free resources out there that'll help you get that. And I'm even seeing on the front lines of working for numerous companies, they're already asking for people with those skills. That's like one of the most desirous skills. So people who are
Like
AI
Excel,
native
right?
there. So, yep. So if you can get that, you're going to have a leg up. So the jobs hopefully will come to you. And then the others, just be open to change. The example you used before, if you're a manager, like be open to be like, well, I'm maybe not going to be 100% managing the rest of my career, knowing that, there is opportunity. And I think there's a way to steer this into doing the things that you're more qualified to do that are actually more, enjoyable and things. So just have that open mind and also do be adopting these tools, learn how to understand. But I'm fully optimistic there's going to be a lot more jobs. They may not look the same title, same size of organization as the past, but there will be jobs out there.
Well, we'll have to wrap this up, but when we come back, I really want to talk about the culture of organizations and change management, and I think that's going to be critical on how we succeed for the future. We'll stay within the AI realm because I think that's relevant, and it would be a waste not to have you talk to some of those sort of human behaviors that we need to cultivate and develop. And especially for the listeners of the show, we've only done 5 episodes, but we've reached over 15 countries. So yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people are tuning in. People are trying to learn. So I'm sure that you're going to be a blessing to all of them, and they're going to really fundamentally understand and help them in their careers. But thank you so much
What
for
thank you
coming on
so
the
much. I
show.
think you and your organization is going to be one of those that will be opening up those careers that people don't there. So really excited to see what you're doing and excited to see the future of it because yeah, it's so much promise.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, thanks, Nick, and see you on the next show.
Yeah, see them.